I will use the word doomed in the long term.
60% of the world's central bank's foreign exchange reserves, the money to cover unexpected financial emergencies,
The American dollar is undoubtedly the dominant currency today, but the primary question is how long it will reign. Since the Second World War, the US dollar has been used for international trade. In the 21st century, countries cannot imagine that other currencies could replace the dollar. The thing is that even the most powerful states are heavily invested in American currency by holding large amounts of foreign exchange reserves and foreign assets, primarily American bonds. For instance, to this day, Japan, China, and the United Kingdom are the major foreign holders of Treasury securities, with over 1.1 trillion, 859 billion, and 668 billion US dollars of bonds, respectively. However, we can observe dramatic changes which may lead to the demise of dollar dominance. So in this video, we'll cover 10 signs that prove that the American dollar is losing its influence. But before jumping into the list, consider subscribing to the channel and hit the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss any uploads. So let's begin with the grand scheme of things. Number 1, in June 2022, IMF issued a fascinating article. Here we can see a trend that other states are boycotting the dollar. The dollar's share of global foreign exchange reserves fell below 59% in the final quarter of last year, extending a 2-decade decline, according to the IMF's currency composition of official foreign exchange reserves data. Now, let's focus on individual states that have been ditching dollar more actively than ever. Number 2, China and Russia are the most significant drivers of de-dollarization. It is unsurprising that Moscow intends to get rid of its dependency on Washington, as the geopolitical rivalry has not disappeared. In fact, since 2014, when Russia made its most significant imperialistic move by annexing Crimea and occupying part of the Donbas region of Ukraine, it was clear that Kremlin needed to find another way to avoid economic sanctions, primarily tied to the US dollar. Already in 2019, Russia reduced its US bond assets from 96 billion US dollars to a mere 15 billion. However, after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Putin decided to decrease reliance on American currency further and magnify bilateral trade with China and yuan. In March, Russia's Putin and China's Xi met in Moscow and tactfully announced de-dollarization. According to Foreign Policy, last year, China bought 50% more energy from Russia than the previous year. The two countries traded with each other more than ever before. In fact, China was not only the largest country to sell goods to Russia in 2022, but also had the most considerable increase in sales to Russia compared to any other country. Just recently, the Chinese currency, yuan, became the most commonly traded currency on the Moscow exchange, surpassing the US dollar for the first time ever. Almost 40% of all trading on the exchange was in yuan. Number 3, apart from partnering with other countries to dump the US dollar, Beijing is decreasing its dependence on the American economy. China's holdings of U.S. government bonds in January fell to its lowest level since May 2009 due to the U.S. Federal Reserve's tight monetary policy and the escalating tensions between the countries. The officials in the White House have noticed China's policy. For example, Jared Bernstein, who's being considered to lead the White House Council of Economic Advisors, recently spoke at a Senate Banking Committee hearing. He explained that the United States, having control over the world's reserve currency, has some advantages. One is the ability to impose sanctions, which the US government used against Russia due to its conflict with Ukraine. But he also said there was some evidence that China wants the dollar to weaken as the international reserve currency. Number 4, BRICS. Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa surpassed G7's GDP and became the largest economic organization on Earth, contributing nearly 31.5% of the global GDP and 41% of the worldwide population. Economists around the world agree that a BRICS currency could shake the dollar's dominance. In March, in New Delhi, Alexander Babakov, who holds a high position in Russia's parliament, stated that Russia is leading the effort to create a new currency. This currency will be used explicitly for trading between 5 countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and is intended to make cross-border trade more straightforward. Number 5, the Argentinian government recently announced that the country would pay for Chinese imports in yuan rather than dollars. According to recent data, Argentina intended to pay $1 billion of Chinese imports in yuan in April. After that, around $790 million of monthly imports will be paid in yuan. Number 6, Brazil. Latin America's largest economy strengthens ties with China in an effort to decrease trade in US dollars. Therefore, it makes sense for Brazil to adopt trade in Chinese yuan, as China is the largest trading partner. In 2021, Brazil's bilateral trade with China accounted for $135 billion, twice as much as with the US. Moreover, a recent report from the central bank shows that the Chinese yuan has become more critical than the euro in Brazil's foreign reserves. This reflects the growing economic connection between Brazil and China. Just a few years ago, the yuan wasn't included in Brazil's foreign reserves at all, but now it makes up over 5% of the country's central bank holdings, while the euro counts for 4.74%. Finally, Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, Brazil Ltd, said it was successfully processed its first cross-border renminbi settlement transaction, making substantial progress in the bank's cross-border RMB business, the Brazilian market. Number 7, Southeastern Asian states also support the trend of de-dollarization. For example, Malaysia and China are considering establishing Asia Fund to encourage using local currencies instead of the American dollar. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim stated that China's President Xi Jinping was open to talks about establishing an agency that would assist their countries and others in the region to lessen their reliance on the US dollar and the International Monetary Fund. Number 8, China is the largest crude oil importer in the world. Thus, to ensure the security of the most precious fuel, Beijing needs to derail from using US dollars when trading with Mid-East's largest oil exporter nations. According to China National Petroleum Corporation's Economics and Technology Research Institute, China's crude oil imports will average 10.8 million barrels per day 2023, matching the previous record high from 2020 to a staggering 540 million tons. Unsurprisingly, Beijing is looking for the opportunity to use yuan as a trading currency with Saudi Arabia, one of its largest oil importers. As a result, the Import Bank of China, major policy bank in China, announced in March that it had achieved the first loan cooperation with Saudi National Bank, the largest bank in Saudi Arabia, in yuan, facilitating financial cooperation under the framework of the China Proposed Belt and Road Initiative. And since 2022, both nations have been in active talks to conduct oil sales in China in yuan instead of the dollar. Number 9. Although the Chinese yuan is the biggest threat to dollar dominance, other countries also attempt to use local or common currencies in bilateral trade. For instance, Brazil and Argentina want to introduce a common currency called SUR. In January, new Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and Argentine leader Alberto Fernandez said they wanted to advance discussions on a common South American currency to be used for financial and trade flows. Although economists quickly noted that both countries would face challenges introducing a common currency due to the state of their economies. However, one thing is certain: South Africa's common currency is actually about de-dollarization. Number 10. As a regional leader, India is also interested in facilitating its currency, the Indian rupee, as a trading unit. At the end of March, New Delhi introduced a new foreign trade policy to increase India's exports and encourage countries that struggle to access the US dollar to use the rupee. Eventually, New Delhi has signed an agreement with Malaysia that paves the way for trade in Indian rupee. Also, since the end of 2022, more and more countries are showing interest in India's rupee trade settlement mechanism. This allows international transactions to be done using the Indian rupee instead of the US dollar or other significant currencies. Tajikistan, Cuba, Luxembourg, and Sudan are among the countries that have started talking to India about using this mechanism. Russia has already used it in the past when they faced sanctions due to the conflict in Ukraine. At the end of the day, it's clear that regional leaders' attempt to challenge the US dollar's supremacy is just hitting up. Countries like China, Russia, India, and Brazil have already implemented the first steps to increase the use of their currencies in international trade. Thank you for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video and share your thoughts in the comments section below.